collection management systems. My name is I'm at a botany at Trent Natural History Museum, and I've been asked to chair this session. I've received very strict recommendation that each presentation should be kept to a maximum of 15 minutes. So the Irish translation needs to keep you on time, and if we are kept on time, we'll have 10 minutes at the end for a joint final discussion on all presentations. So I will call the first speaker, Havinga Reinout, who will talk to us about learning from the retail industry, collection management, and Barcodes.
Thank you. I'm just going to start with a little bit more. So, thank you for coming to this session, which is titled Learning from the Retail Industry, Collection Management with Barcodes. I realized this morning it should be called Barcodes Are Dead. Long live Barcodes. Because we've, a lot of gardens, we know a lot of gardens have tried barcodes in the past. It's quite a boring topic, and it has failed for several gardens. And we wondered why. So this is a bit of a story about what we did to make it work. So my name is Havard, Ostgaard. I work for IrisBG team. I'm the manager, so we make software for botanic gardens. And together with me, Reinout, will take over to talk about it himself.
I'm Reinout Havinga. I'm a curator in the Amsterdam Botanic Garden. And I'm a happy user of Barcodes at the moment, so we'll go through the step through how that happened. Well, when I started in Amsterdam in 2009, I found these labels, and I was the one responsible for producing these labels, and I did. But of course, these barcodes on the labels made me wonder, because I was producing them, but I wasn't using them. So, at some point, I wanted to close the loop. So I wanted to get a barcode scanner, and so to be able to use them to pick up the information into the barcode. That was all I knew. So at one day, I remember I went to a website for barcode scanners, and I was looking at different models and everything. I thought, okay, this is maybe a nice one. So I imagined myself in the garden with a scanner scanning it, and right at the moment when I imagined this, I thought, okay, so now I've scanned it, and then what? Because then it's in my barcode scanner or something. So then I started to really think, okay, I cannot just buy a barcode scanner and then have it up and running. It needs to be integrated in my software. And at that point I had a software that did not provide this integration. And so I knew that I had to talk to a software developer to make the barcodes being useful in your system. And at that moment, Havard, IrisBG was accepting the challenge, and that's how we went into this process of figuring out how to make it work. So it used to be only for decoration.
So when Reinout came to me and started talking about this, we had a challenge, and I sort of worked on sort of similar projects with barcodes before, and we realized that, as most people, me included, when you use technology, you just want it to work. You don't really care about the nitty-gritty details. But if you go a bit more analytical about that and analyze why does technology work or why doesn't it work, there are sort of, from a technology perspective, there are 4 things that needs to be present for something to work. It has to have some value for the person who's using it. It has to have a certain level of usability. People must understand how they actually use the product. It has to be a certain level of desirability. In our setting, the desirability level doesn't be very high, but for a kid who's going to play with a toy, the story is very different. It has to be very desirable. So, and finally, has to sort of adopt to your surrounding or the work you do to a certain level. People are willing to change the way they work, but not to a sort of great extent. So these things need to be in place. If either of these things doesn't exist, and that was the story with the old barcodes. You know, the value was very, very questionable, and well, there was a lot of things that wasn't working when you just had a scanner. You have to make a lot of effort to get that data out from the barcode. So you end up with this guy. You know, if this doesn't come in place, you are just very upset, and then you put the barcode scanner in a drawer, and that's it. Barcodes doesn't work. That will be the conclusion. So before I go on, I just wanted, you know, people who. Most people know what barcodes are, but I just wanted to give you a few examples in case someone. These are just a few examples, but there are two types of generations, you could call them. These are called one-dimensional barcodes, and then there are these more fancy ones, which are 2D barcodes. They have different qualities, the different barcodes. Some are easier to scan, some are more fault-tolerant. That's typically what you find in these 2D barcodes. And there are many more than this, but so the idea is you have a barcode, you have a machine that can read this and then interpret the information that's behind it. Often it's just numbers, but as you've probably seen QR codes, they often have a web address, but you can also have a lot of text information there. So anyway, it's like a photo or whatever that a machine can scan and interpret. So, and then of course, when we sort of said, okay, barcodes are dead, you know, so actually someone said that to me last week, barcodes, you know, that doesn't really work. And then you go to the supermarket and buy groceries, and you realize, no, I'm not so sure. They seem to get it to work. You know how it is also when the barcode scanner doesn't work at the till. Suddenly, everyone panics. I actually went to the petrol station, and I wasn't allowed to buy water because the barcode scanner didn't work. I mean, he went a bit far. Because he didn't think how life could work without the scanner. But anyways, these institutions have made barcodes, you know, an important integral part of their business. And then Amazon, you know, as an example, how would they run their business without barcodes? And the story goes on. Couriers, if you get deliveries on the door, you know, today I know hardly any couriers don't have a barcode scanner. And then finally, for those really adventurous people, you can actually go and scan your own stuff when you shop in the supermarket now in many places. So it's a sort of a success story, I think, in many places, but not so much in the Botanic Garden. So why does this work, and why it's so hard in a garden? So what we have looked at is that it's like an infrastructure that needs to be in place. You have to have the technology in place. And you have to have a workflow. You have to understand what are you going to use, you know, how are you going to use this barcode scanner. It's not just to say scan code, it needs to be something more. What is the workflow that you're going to support? Speaking a bit more about the technology, it has to be seamless, it has to work, like in the supermarket. It's just like beep, 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 and it works. They don't really need to think about it. That's how it should be. And finally, we added people to this slide because you know, you can't force people to learn to drive a car. You know, you have to have a certain kind of willingness. But that goes with most technology. Something is very easy to sell, but with barcode scanners or this type of technology, you might have some staff that is not really keen to get involved in that, but that's fine. You just have to be aware of that. So if you get all those three things right, you might be able to get something to work. I put might, because you have to get this right all the way. So when we worked through with Reinout, and we ended up with supporting three basic workflows. One is the capability of going out to the garden to scan and get an accession record up and make a few changes. The second one is a bit more refined, where you can actually set the machine to say I want to do an inventory and update the plant status on the plants I scan. And the final one, which is very generic, which turned out to be the big sort of seller, as it were, is a sort of generic thing to add information to a list. So that means going around and scanning, I'm adding this to the list I'm working on now. And that's a very, which Reinout will talk a bit more about after me. And that's it, I think. So, over to Reinout and his examples.
Yeah, so when the whole technological part and then hope for the best. But it turned out to be a big success because, first of all, when seeds were coming in from seedless, for instance, the first thing I do is accessioning them, but also I relabel them. So I put a label of my own administration on the seed package. So everything from that point onward is more efficient because I can refer to an accession number in my own system. If I take half of this pile of seeds to go to the nursery garden, I scan the packages that go to the nursery, and that's the list of plants that will be sown and that will be provided with a pin label, for instance. But also in the nursery, it was a great success this year because with hardly any effort, we could record for a large batch of seeds when they were sown, when they were germinated, when they were pricked out, and eventually when they were ready to be planted out. So I could just go through the pots, or actually it wasn't me, it was my colleague who did it, who was responsible for growing the plants. He just goes through all the plants, puts them on the list, and then updates the status in the software on the desktop. And I have never had such a good overview of what was happening in the nursery garden as this year. So this tradition of having backlogs and always be behind with your records was suddenly gone. And that was quite quite something to notice. And then eventually when plants are planted out in the garden, the system gets much more stable, so you don't have a lot of moving around with plants anymore. And this was my main concern, whether barcodes would yield any benefit here. But again, when big changes do occur, and they happened also twice, we had 2 examples this year, a greenhouse renovation, for instance, all the plants were taken out, and all the plants were put back in again. So when the plants were taken out, I scan all the barcodes, I know what was taken out. When things have been planted in again, I scan them again and I know exactly what has been planted in. So there's just, and this scanning 100 plants in this way is really, just 10 minutes or so. So it's without hardly any effort, you get very close to knowing exactly what you have and where it is. So even in the display garden with your regularly labeled plants, it works out. And there are many more possibilities that might pop up in the future, and one of the things that we're looking into at the moment is how we could use the planning and tracking biological control. So we have a guy coming for biological control in the greenhouse, and he says, okay, this plant, it's this mite, and it needs that natural enemy. And so what he does traditionally is making a map on this plant, that enemy, this plant, that enemy. And as all my plants are mapped, I could also maybe send them into the garden with the barcode scanner and scan the plant that needs the mites or something. So that's what we're looking into now, and there are more things that you could think of.
Can I just interject on the previous slide that Reinout mentioned? Instead of, when you move a plant, you should say, okay, I moved that plant. But the approach that Reinout does, they move the plants and then they scan the whole bed. Yeah. So they know what's there then, and then a new snapshot instead of keeping track of where things are moving. Yeah. So it's a sort of, mindset is completely upside down, but it's much more efficient when you have the scanner. Obviously, if you move them and have to write on paper, you would do one at a time.
But the basic thing is still that also without a barcode scanner it works this way. So if you don't have a barcode scanner, you can do the same thing. It just takes you an hour instead of 10 minutes. But this is also a beneficial workflow. So it's also a lightning workflow. I think that's also part of why it works out eventually, because the barcode just replaces writing down the number in existing workflows.
So just quickly summarize what we learned sort of from a technological, practical point of view. We tried a lot of type of hardware and everything, and we ended up with the same kind of equipment that you see that the couriers are using, so in learning from the professionals. These scanners on these are just they're just fantastic compared to, trying to use an iPhone or something. It just doesn't compare to all much. So that's number one. The other thing is we really worked hard to integrate the software really well with the scanner. So you don't have to wait 3 seconds. It's like almost instantly. You scan and then you've done. So that's really important. And performance, reliability, all these things. People get restless very quickly, so we have to make sure that things work. And we also looked together to find barcodes that had the compromise of as you may have seen on one slide, we ended up with a data matrix, which are sort of quite elegant on the label down here. It looks, it's quite unintrusive, and it has a quite a high level of fault tolerance. So if there's a bit of dirt, it will still work. Not a lot of dirt, but a bit. And if you go back to the and finally, also, if you have labels with high contrast, you can't put light brown and dark brown together. It has to have a big contrast, and the reflection, if you have a cover which reflects a lot, it's also difficult to scan. All those kind of small things. One thing that I'm sort of, I shouldn't say I'm surprised, but the whole idea about this list, how versatile that is quite fun actually, instead of us trying to focus on one sort of process. We have now more of a generic solution that can be used in so many different scenarios.
So for me,
time is
for me it's a very good deal. Eventually, inventories are very quick. I never doubt to make an inventory. I have no transcription errors. I can still have an error, of course, with the wrong label with the wrong plant. So you always need this checkup. Data capture is easier to delegate and give the scanner to somebody else and let it try. I can also rely better on data being captured because it's not a trade-off anymore to go out in the garden and capture your data because there's hardly any time involved anymore. So the end of the story is my records are better up to date and are moving into a situation where they are really better up to date. And that will mean that my data quality improved and my data is more reliable.
Workshop starts at 9. I mean, the program is big, so it starts at 9. And bring a laptop if you have one. That's it. So thank you very much. Yeah, we take questions after the session.
At the end.
Yeah.